Okay, tonight we start reading Captain Underpants and the Big Bad Battle of the Bionic Booger Boy, Part 2, The Revenge of the Ridiculous Robo-Boogers. Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the second half of Captain Underpants and the Big Bad Battle of the Bionic Booger Boy. This comic book should give you a pretty good update of our story so far. The sad, sad truth about Captain Underpants. Once upon a time, there were two cool kids named George and Harold. We're mecha groovy. Me too. But unfortunately, they had a mean principal named Mr. Krupp. Blah, blah, blah. So one day they hypnotised him with a 3D hypno ring. You will obey our every command. Yes, masters. Mr. Krupp became under their control. You are now a monkey. Ha ha ha. But they made a terrible mistake. You are now Captain Underpants. Okay, ha ha ha. Tra-la-la. It was funny until he jumped out the window. Hey, come back here. No way. Mr. Krupp really thought he was a real superhero. He got in all kinds of trouble. Oh no! One time he almost got killed by a dandelion. Help! So George stole some superpowered juice from a UFO and he gave it to him. Glub, glub, glub. And Mr. Krupp got superpowers. Now he can fly and stuff. Here we go again. Now, whenever Mr. Krupp hears somebody snap their fingers, blah, 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 snap, he turns into a Captain Underpants. Or into Captain Underpants. Tra-la-la. And whenever Captain Underpants gets water on his head, he turns back into Mr. Krupp. Blah, blah, blah. So remember, don't snap your fingers around Mr. Krupp, but that's only the first part of our story. Read on. Okay, well, there is this other kid in our school named Melvin Sneedley. I'm a dumb nerd. Melvin invented a combino thingy that morphs stuff together. First, he combined his pet hamster, Sulu, with a robot. Eureka! I have created the world's first bionic hamster. Next, he tried to combine himself with a robot. But he sneezed at the last second. Achoo! And he accidentally got combined with a robot and his boogers and became the Bionic Booger Boy. I am a dumb nerd. Uh-oh. Then one time he caught a cold. Achoo! Then he got mad and turned into a monster. Then he ate up Captain Underpants. But Sulu the Bionic hamster beat him up. Then Melvin's parents came and reversed the combino thingy and they zapped him and blew away the boogers. Boom! This is disgusting. Now Melvin and Mr. Krupp were safe, but something was wrong with them. I'm a dumb nerd. Blah, blah, blah. Then the boogers came to life and smashed the combino thingy. And the chase was on. The end of part 1. Oh my God. Chapter 1. George and Harold. This is George Beard and Harold Hutchins. George is the kid on the left with the tie and the flat top. Harold is the one on the right with the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now. National Fine Arts Academy. This is Mr. Krupp, Melvin Sneedley and Sulu the Bionic Hamster. Mr. Krupp is the one on the left with the underwear and the bald head. Melvin is the one on the right with the bow tie and glasses. And Sulu the Bionic Hamster is the hamstery looking one in the middle with laser eyeballs. The macro-hydraulic jumpertronic legs and the macro-hydraulic jumpertronic legs and super somnambulating mini automo arms, the virtually indestructible flexogromonic endoskeleton, and the twin turbo 3000 SP5 Kung Fu titanium lithium alloy processor. Remember that now too. Well, that's all the stuff that the hamster has. Crazy. And these are the ridiculous robo-boogers, 3 of the vilest, most disgusting and most terrifying creatures ever to drip across the face of the earth. Even their names were horrible, monstrous monikers, the sound of which would drive madness into the hearts of the bravest heroes. If you dare to know their nightmarishly deplorable names, I will tell you, but don't blame me if you have to sleep with a nightlight on for the rest of your life. Their names were, from left to right, Carl, Trixie and Frankenbooger. See, I told you they were scary names.
National Thought Academies.
Mm-hmm. Cal, Trixie and Frankenbooger each bellowed out terrifying, ear-piercing screams of unstoppable fury as they chased our heroes down the city streets. Finally, the robo-boogers cornered everyone in a dead-end alley. The 3 Flemish fiends oozed closer and closer until they at last leaped toward their prey. The situation had become so frightening that George, Harold, Melvin and Mr. Krupp closed their eyes tightly and waited for the terrifying sounds of their own inevitable demise. Globble, globble, globble. But instead of hearing inevitably demisey type sounds, our heroes heard something quite different. You see, at the very last second, Sulu the Bionic hamster stretched open his flexogromonic jaw and shoved the 3 boogery behemoths into his mouth. Sulu's bionic cheeks swelled to capacity as he raised his furry head toward the sky. Then, with the force of a lunar shuttle liftoff, Sulu shot the 3 slimy villains into space. Spit-tooey, spit-tooey, spit-tooey.
Yeah.
The 3 ridiculous robo-boogers sailed through the sky like cannonballs. In no time at all, they left Earth's atmosphere and began sailing toward Uranus. The terrifying battle was over. Wow, that was a really quick story, said Harold. This is going to be our shortest adventure ever. Ain't that the truth, said George. Chapter 2. It ain't. Unfortunately for George and Harold, their adventure had only just begun. As everyone walked back to school, a confusing argument got underway. I want my hamster back, said Mr. Krupp. Your hamster, said George. First of all, he's our hamster now, and second of all, he never belonged to you. He belonged to Melvin. I don't care who he belongs to, Melvin interrupted. Hamsters aren't allowed in the school, especially not in my school. I'm giving all 3 of you bubs a detention for bringing that furry beast into your classroom. You can't give us detention, said Harold. You're just a kid like us. Suddenly, Mr. and Mrs. Sneedley came running towards them. Melvin, you're all right, cried Mrs. Sneedley. We're so happy you're safe, son, cried Mr. Sneedley. Mummy, Papa, cried Mr. Krupp. He dashed over to Melvin's parents with open arms. The sight of a bald-grown man in his underwear running toward them made Mrs. Sneedley scream in horror. Hey, what's the big deal? Yelled Mr. Sneedley. It's me, Papa, cried Mr. Krupp. Don't you recognise your own son? Get away from us, you weirdo, Mrs. Sneedley yelled as she hit Mr. Krupp with her purse. Melvin ignored the commotion as he walked past them all and went into the school. Melvin stormed upstairs and headed for the school office. Everyone except Miss Anthrope had already gone home for the day, and she was getting ready to leave too. Just where do you think you're going, woman? Shouted Melvin. Miss Anthrope turned and stared in shock at the 4th grader standing behind her. What did you just say? She cried in a voice that was rapidly becoming a scream. Who do you think you are? I'm the guy who's going to fire your hiney if you don't let me in the office now, yelled Melvin.
What?
Normally, school secretaries don't have the authority to hang children from a coat hook by his underwear, but today had been a particularly stressful day for Miss Anthrope. She had been covered in snot, carried through town by a rampaging robotic monster, and worst of all, forced to chaperone an elementary school field trip. Now it was payback time. Chapter 3. Mr. Melvin and Cruppy the Kid. Miss Anthrope collected her things and left for home, grumbling under her breath as she passed George and Harold in the hallway. The 2 boys could hear Melvin's angry shouts coming from down the hall, so they went to the office to investigate. While they were getting Melvin off the hook, Mr. Krupp ran into the office sweaty and out of breath. "You guys have got to help me," he cried. "My mum and dad are trying to kill me. Has the world gone mad?" "Relax, Einstein," said George calmly, and put some clothes on. George and Harold had already figured out what was going on, so they tried to explain the situation to Melvin and Mr. Krupp. "You see," said Harold, "after you guys got morphed together by the Combinatron 2000, we switched the batteries around and separated you. But for some strange reason, it switched your brains around. Now, Mr. Krupp's brain is inside Melvin's body, and Melvin's brain is inside Mr. Krupp's body." "That's a bunch of bunk," yelled Melvin. "Take a look and see for yourself," said George. He pulled a full-length mirror in front of Mr. Krupp and Melvin. They looked at themselves in astonishment. I'm a kid again," said the guy who looked like Melvin but had Mr. Krupp's brain. "And I'm old and fat and bald and ugly," cried the guy who looked like Mr. Krupp but had Melvin's brain. "And I have bad breath and creepy nose hairs and—" "Hey!" yelled the guy who looked like Melvin but had Mr. Krupp's brain. At this point, you might be saying to yourself, "Dang, this book is getting confusing." Now, don't worry. This will all get cleared up by the end of chapter 17. But for now, let's rename the two characters who have the right brains in the wrong bodies, shall we? Let's call the guy who looks like Mr. Krupp but has Melvin Sneedley's brain Mr. Melvin. And we'll call the kid who looks like Melvin Sneedley but has Mr. Krupp's brain Kruppy the Kid. Please refer to the handy X-ray chart below in case you get mixed up. Melvin's brain, Mr. Melvin. Mr. Krupp's brain, Kruppy the Kid.